You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. It is the middle of the summer, a good 5 or 6 weeks before students have to worry about the numeric value of pi or the significance of the Bill of Rights. But for school administrators and teachers, summer's the time to lay plans for the future. Last week, for example, the Cincinnati School Board reviewed a proposal to reorganize the district's high school curriculum. One of the chief players in the setting of future direction of the Cincinnati Public Schools is the Teachers Union, the Cincinnati Federation of Teachers. For years, the CFT was led by Tom Mooney, a frequent guest here on Newsmakers. In the spring, Tom moved on to a new statewide position. Locally, the new director of the CFT, or new president of the CFT, is Rick Beck. Since education is such a frequent topic here on Newsmakers, I wanted to meet Rick and talk about the broad issues before there's some giant controversy. Rick, welcome to Newsmakers.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Let's start out because I don't think most people, I mean, Tom was so out front. I don't know that most people know who you are. Tell me a little bit about your background as an educator and how long you've been involved with the union activities, which has been a long time already.
Yes. I started teaching, makes me start feeling old, back in 1972. I've been a high school and junior high school math teacher. I was originally at Samuel Lock Junior High, which is now torn down.
Do you remember the numeric value of pi?
I could with some review.
Okay,
no, I do.
right. Okay, go ahead.
So I've been teaching since '72, except there was a 5-year period where I worked with my family's construction business and then returned to teaching. Last year I was a math teacher at Woodward High School teaching algebra and geometry.
And you've been involved for some time in an active way with the union as well, is that correct?
Yes, I've been bargaining chair for about 10 years, and before that, in '88, I was on the bargaining team.
So how many contracts does that put you on?
Two. I think this has been the 5th contract that I've been involved in. Okay. The one we just completed.
Let's talk about a couple of things that are out there. One of them that is looming that I know is very important is this 4th grade proficiency reading guarantee by the state. That, as I understand it, the guarantee is that every student by the time they hit 4th grade will be able to read, and if they can't, they won't be able to progress. So the potential is you jam a school system up where people can't move on to the next grade. How is Cincinnati doing with that? And the summer school program has been very important for this to try to cope with it. And what do you see about that test? What are you concerned about with that issue?
Some of the things that you mentioned, I mean, the high stakes nature of the test and what that does. At the other end, we look at research that says if students are delayed for a year or two from being with their classmates, they become very likely to drop out. So that the intervention that happens with these students has to happen immediately and be so effective that students don't get left behind, because that really portends bad things happening. Another piece that CFT would be in favor of would be tying some of the levy, as it was in March, future levy in November, to smaller class sizes in K through 3 grades. We think if kids get better individual attention in smaller classes, that the instruction in literacy will be more effective and that we won't be seeing as many kids hitting that wall at that time.
Now the test, as I understand it, will be given at the end of the 3rd grade or the end of the 4th grade?
To be honest, I mean, I
Okay.
get the details of this sometimes a little bit confused, because this is an issue that I haven't yet dealt with in the 2 months that I've been president. So.
And you raised the question here about shrinking the size of the classroom for effectiveness. Now, you and I were talking just before, we're somewhat same age. I started teaching in '68, a little bit older than you.
Oh, much older.
Front end of the baby boomers. I grew up where, as I remember in my 1st grade classroom, we had over 50 students. When I was a teacher, I had classes up to 47, but very normally above 40, not in the public schools, in a Catholic school. For a lot of people, we grew up with much larger classroom size. How much do we have to shrink the classroom? Because this is a constant issue we hear these days. How small do these classrooms have to be effective?
Well, part of it is I think you have to look and say, what are the functions, what are the things that are supposed to happen in schools now as opposed to when you and I were in school. And I think that most of us would agree, especially for the population of students that we now have, that you need to provide extra services. And so teachers are much more counselors, social workers, trying to deal with family in terms of modeling and helping extend education in the families. And so it's no longer just that you're performing in front of 30 or 40 students and that they get it, they get the support at home that we had. Schools are being asked now to educate more students than happened when we were younger.
In the current situation, in that grades, K through 3, what is the intended size of a classroom in the Cincinnati Public Schools these days?
I'm not sure there is an intention. What we do is with the per pupil, per pupil funding, schools in some way determine that for themselves. I know the state, when they talk about bringing more dollars or talking about trying to get classes, I think between 15 and 18, and I think that's what research shows. If you can get class sizes around 15.
So that's the goal. The goal would be 15 to 18. Is the target now, or the sort of the norm now, and this is, I'm just, from what I hear, friends of mine, teachers who are, is it maybe more like 22 to 25?
Yes. It's difficult to assess that sometimes because there may be other adults, teachers, certificated teachers in the building, but the students aren't distributed evenly among them. They may have special roles that they play, and so when you divide out the number of students and the number of teachers, it may look like it's lower than what you actually see if you walk into a classroom.
If you walk through the halls and went into a classroom.
Right.
Before we talking about the fourth grade reading promise, before we get off that area, the whole area of proficiency testing, which has become very popular politically, from a teacher's point of view, from a union point of view, how do you see the proliferation of depending on proficiency tests?
Our position has been really since the inception of the test that it's something we have to live with, and that it's one of the things that the public looks for in terms of accountability and how a school district is doing, and it's a measure that we can use, so that we really haven't opposed it.
Is the 9th grade proficiency test that Ohio uses, is it an accurate reflection of what students should be learning? Is it a fair test?
Ooh, those are two different questions.
All right. Let's say, is it an accurate reflection of what students are learning?
There are many who would argue no, but we would say it's the measure that we have, and so, we're going to have to use it. We're going to have to, when we get ranked and all those things, our hands are tied by that.
Okay. One of the primary issues, and this didn't get worked out during the last negotiations, but there has been some movement on this since the last contract, and that's the way teachers are going to be paid. And Cincinnati is sort of out front right now in experimenting with changing the way teachers are paid. Traditionally, teachers have always been paid based on the degrees they have from college and the number of years. The more years you taught, the higher it automatically lockstepped up. Now we're going to a different type of system, which the union has been very out front in cooperating with this. Where do you see this issue right now?
Well, first of all, I served with Kathleen Ware from the administration as the co-chair of the committee or committees that put this together. We need to do this. There are 2 or 3 pieces to that new compensation or new evaluation system. One is the evaluation system itself. The second is the compensation piece, how those evaluations are tied to compensation. And the third is a staff or professional development piece. And just briefly, what we did was identified from national research that talked about what happens in high-achieving classrooms, we identified what we call 16 standards of good teaching. And those are across 4 domains, and they're areas that most people would think, yeah, well, good teachers should be doing that. It's preparation, one is classroom environment, the other is the actual teaching in the classroom, content and pedagogy, and the 4th is professionalism. So those 4 domains, those 16 standards, are divided up among those. And so what we decided was that teachers should be evaluated against those standards of good teaching. If they're doing those 16 things, if we see evidence of good work along those 16 standards, there should be high achievement in that classroom, because that's what the research shows.
But let's be clear, the change in the way teachers are going to get paid isn't linked back to exactly how those students achieve on those proficiency tests.
No, ultimately though, it
hopefully there's a connection.
Right, and we'll be looking for that.
But that's not, I mean, in some places people have said we should pay teachers based on how well their students do, but that's not this system.
No, and we have, I'll digress a second, we do have something that takes into account test scores, and that is our school incentive award and our accountability system. So that what we've done is, as a school, we've taken a look at how scores improve over a whole school, and we reward schools that have high improvement, and schools that have remained at the bottom and aren't showing any signs of moving, we've redesigned. We closed 2 schools last year, and there'll be 2 schools opening up this year with new staffs, new teachers, new administrators, everybody. And that's where we use test scores.
One of those schools that was closed and reorganized, Parham, got a sort of a pat on the back from the
Secretary
of Education, who came from Washington here to point out Parham, right?
Right, and one of the things they've done is they've used community. But yes, I mean, you know, we said this school isn't working.
And does that translate into money for the teachers? Does that translate into financial rewards for the teachers?
We just negotiated that. Actually, we had tried to have that 2 or 3 years ago, and teachers had rejected it. But in this contract, we did negotiate something that will reward all of the staff in that school if it's
school-wide.
You're right.
Now, the program that you've been experimenting with, this evaluation program that you were just describing, that, though, has not been adopted system-wide, right?
Correct. What happened, we've had the evaluation system piloted this year. The compensation piece, and I'll explain how that's tied in, the compensation piece will not be voted on by membership, by teachers, until the middle of September. So that part has not, well, the evaluation and the compensation part has not yet been ratified.
What's your sense, though, of how people are feeling about that, both those who took part in the experiment and those who have tried to observe it?
It's really mixed, and there are 2 main issues that people have with that. One is issues about accountability and just getting used to the idea that teachers need to be more accountable more frequently, and that's a change. I mean, sadly, our evaluation system dates from the mid-'70s, so it's hardly state-of-the-art, and teachers have not been evaluated as frequently as they should be. So having teachers accept that, I mean, we think as part of the professionalism that we need to demonstrate, that has to happen, but that has been, that's part of the sales job. The second piece that people need to look at is the implementation phase. Can it be done, and can it be done fairly? Can it be done, you know, using reasonable amount of resources? And those people have a lot more concerns about those issues.
You know, one of the things I've heard reported, some teachers saying, gee, it's not going to be objective. There's an this is a subjective. But, you know, the nature of the rest of the world out there is that's how employees in all kinds of other places get evaluated.
Well, we actually think we end up being more objective than what's happened in the past, because with those 16 standards, there's a description of quality work in each of those 16 areas. So a teacher reading that can know what it is that they're being rated against, what it looks like. The other piece is that we're going to have teacher evaluators, peers, doing 4 of the 6 observations in a classroom, and 2 of those will be done by a school administrator, and then written documentation to deal with some of the other areas will be there, so that a teacher who has a dispute with what they see can go and say, take a look at this documentation. This shows that I should be somewhere else.
I hate to be blunt about this, but as a parent or former parent of former students in the system, could this lead to more effectively weeding out weak teachers, in the sense not just that they're transferred to another school, but they're actually out of the system?
People could think that. You know, I like to think instead, I mean, the flip side of that is that for too long, teachers haven't had a model for what is excellent teaching that's based on most current research, and that's what we think we're giving people. Okay. These are the things that make you a good teacher, and the skills that we have of teachers in the district, you know, I would hope that they're going to adapt what they're doing to match those standards and the skills demonstrated. If they don't, you know, I don't think any of us want them teaching our kids.
You know, one of the things that I've heard a lot of my teacher friends say, not just during negotiations, lots of things get said during contract negotiations.
We don't mean any of them.
Oh, right, I know. But one of the things I've heard constantly for long before that was the view that Stephen Adamowski was brought in here to, quote unquote, break the union. What's your view on that? What's your view on the superintendent and how he's done and what his future should be?
Oh, that's a good one. Teachers really do have a belief that he was brought in here, you know, almost only to break the union. In my dealings with him over the last few months and trying to talk to him about important issues, that hasn't been front and center. You know, what I'm looking for is some kind of collaborative relationship that we can work for whatever. I mean, he's our superintendent right now, and we have to find some way to be able to move forward. I think that he came in with a certain set of ideas that really didn't match very well with what with Cincinnati, and that I would hope that over the last couple of years he's getting smarter about that. Not that he needs to kowtow to anybody, but that the union, I don't think, has been the enemy in this district. I mean, you know, Tom's legacy is one of pushing very hard for reform and creating a professional group of teachers. And so that's not something that you come in and you want to dismantle. That's something that you want to build on. The teacher evaluation system, we think, builds on some of those things that we had done before. So we look to ways that we can cooperate, you know, in those areas. And, you know, he's a superintendent right now.
His contract's up, though, at the end of this academic year.
Right. Right, and the board is going to have a tough decision because they have to weigh what they're going to do. I mean, you know,
and you'll have some influence on that.
I don't know about that.
Oh, I know.
I'll certainly have opinions.
Okay, you'll have opinions. We have less than, just have a few seconds left, less than a minute. How do you see the levy for the fall? Is the union totally behind this? Are you going to be out there working full-time on this?
Oh, yes. I mean, you know, the finances of the district demand that everybody work together in order to give us the resources we need to educate kids. You know, I think it'll be a big boost if the teacher evaluation system passes, and so we can go to the public also and be saying, you know, we've made ourselves accountable.
So there's a real linkage between those two things.
I think so. Okay. But yeah, we'll be marching there with everybody else.
Well, I want you to come back on in September in relationship to that vote, and also obviously this fall in relationship to the levy vote. So
I look forward to that.
Congratulations on being the new president, and look forward to having you here.
Okay, thank you very much.
Stay tuned. After the break, I'll be joined by the director of a new program designed to prepare young people for the trades. Welcome back. In an age where all the talk seems to be about computers, .coms, and cyber engineering, it can be easy to forget that all the traditional trades, carpentry, masonry, plumbing, electrical work, and HVAC, still build and maintain the buildings that we all depend on. A new program, We Are the Future, sponsored by the Citizens Committee on Youth, is designed to help 100 young people learn the skills to enter those basic trades. To discuss the We Are the Future program, I am joined by Dr. Lewis Oates, the director of the We Are the Future program. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
What's the goal? What's the long-range purpose of this?
It's rather simple, straightforward, and sweet. It's basically we're preparing young people for the trades that will prepare them for a very productive and promising future. We Are the Future, in fact, is a training trades program designed to provide 100 people between the ages of 18 and 25 in the basic construction trades, introductory skills in the basic construction trades.
Has CCY done anything like this before?
This is a dynamic new venture that basically positions CCY to be poised and ready for making deliberate and direct investments into the future.
Okay. let's be specific. What trades are you going to be training people for? What are the specifics?
The specific trades that we'll be preparing young people for are in the introductory phases for carpentry, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and masonry. Okay. That training program will take place over a period of 1 year. During that training process, these individuals will be in the classroom for 6 months and in the construction area that they were trained in for the remaining 6 months.
So there's real in the field, hands-on training.
The basics of this program, which we're most excited about, we're using a team-oriented approach to learning. Mm-hmm. We're recognizing that, in fact, knowledge is a tool to be used for the good of all. What better way to begin that process than in the building trades? We wanted to ensure that our young people, between the ages of 18 and 25, but does that rule out the possibility that someone who might be 30, who might want to be able to apply, can apply? So that's not going to be a deterrent. But what we wanted to instill in them, the fact that they can learn, because in this program, learning is not an option, it's a requirement. The fact that we can build and increase upon and enhance their values in life, their ethics, their values, the beliefs that they hold dearly. And the mere fact that we're in a position whereby which young people in our community can be about the task of building, enhancing, and developing that community. And just picture, a young person that's a part of our program can now say then when they are married, that they're responsible for the fact that that building got constructed. That's what I did. They can turn that over to their young people.
Let's get real clear. What are the requirements? Who can apply? Who's this program specifically aimed at?
This program is specifically aimed at that age category of 18 to 25. Okay. And it's county-wide eligibility.
So Hamilton County?
Hamilton County as a whole. There is no deterrent for those who are working on their GED but have not acquired that GED. That's not a deterrent for them to apply for this program.
One of the things I noticed, and we got it up on the screen right now, is that there's going to be the application and the interview process, but people who are chosen have to sign a contract.
Absolutely.
Which has to be witnessed. What's the point of that?
The point of that is simply this. It's a commitment of time, it's a commitment of energy on our part to say to the individuals that are admitted, we believe you can learn. We believe you will learn, and as a result of that, we want you to make a statement of your affirmation of that fact by signing a contract. Why do we want that contract witnessed by a significant other? Most of us have some people in our family, in our relationship, that are significant and important to us. They can see we're making a commitment. We can see that they're a part of your life. They're part of that whole fabric that contributes to the success of an individual.
You know, one of the things I want to point out here, and you keep saying it, but I don't want the viewer to miss it, because I've had the chance to read your materials. This emphasis on family and building values it's just not job training. This is a much more holistic approach.
Absolutely. There's one thing to prepare an individual to be job ready, but job ready and not having a skill is another thing. We're saying give them the basic skills that they can apply in any venue that they choose to throughout this nation or world. That's one. But an individual has to have some grounding, some values, some ethics, something that drives and compels them to sustain themselves and their future, as well as build their communities. I think that's critical.
A couple quick things here. One, what's the relationship to the unions, to the trade unions?
We've worked with the unions. Most of the support that we received came from the Associated Builders, by the way, okay, out of Dayton. Of the instructors, all of them are licensed journeymen. Okay. 2 of them have taught with CPS as well as the University of Cincinnati. We have some of the most gifted and talented instructors that are fully certified in their field of expertise. And we're using the National Center for Construction and Education Research document, the document the apprenticeship programs are built upon, as our curricular base for the application of this program.
I want to make sure I don't miss this. If somebody wants to get in touch with you and find out about this, want to talk about that, and we're going to put a telephone number up on the screen. Okay. How do they do that?
Just give us a call over at We Are the Future, which is based currently at CCY. Our operation will be housed at Swifton Commons, okay, and that number is 632-5132.
And how soon will you be actually interviewing and accepting people into the program?
We're currently accepting applications now. We'll be fine-tuning those applications over the next 3-4 weeks. We anticipate opening up the doors on August 22nd.
So now's the time to do it.
Do it now.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here. I'm out of time, but good luck with this program.
Thank you.
We'll watch and see how this
goes.
Okay. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men preparing our region for the future. Have a good week.